Hello, Piro here. Okay, so many people are getting frustrated about the terms and subjectivity, and some people are saying, don't use the term, and some people are saying, oh dear, just use the dictionary. This backed off of that. And then some people are like, the terms are meaningless, or they're meaningless on YouTube. Semantics is the hard work part of philosophy. You have to figure out your definitions, and sometimes it's very hard to agree on definitions, and the argument really, is what definitions you want to use. But, there's some freedom in this process in that words have multiple definitions, and, you can remember that there's 4 or 5 different meanings of a term, okay? One meaning of the word objective is just really, to be rational, reasonable, and honest about them, what appears to be the case. But anyway, I do want to describe why it's important to get these definitions of subjective and objective correctly. And it's basically like this. I mean, everybody believes in subjectivity and objectivity. Everybody. The question is not like which is true. The question is which is going to be more fundamental. Which is defined in terms of the other thing. Okay, now I'm going to give an example of how this works. This is also like measurement. In measurement it's always a comparison. I can say that I'm just looking for an object here. Okay, I got this instead. I have this magazine. Some magazine was sent to me. Okay, I can say the magazine is 2 of these things long. Right? Is 2 of these envelopes long. I can use this as my ruler, and I say, look, it's 2 of those long. But I can also use this as my ruler and say this is half as long as the other thing. So if this is the unit, I'll say, look, this is a half in length. And if this is the unit, I'll say this is 2 in length. Either one of those works. Okay. It's the same way with a lot of terms or similar thing. Not quite like measurement, but it is metaphorically like measurement. It's analogous. You can put one thing in terms of another. So for example, light and dark. You can say lightness is the absence of darkness, or darkness is the absence of light. Now we often do say that oh, it's dark in here. We're saying that darkness is a substance, or at least we're using it grammatically as if it were a substance in that case, as if light is an absence of darkness. Okay, and that works. We do that all the time. There's really not a big problem with that for most purposes. But when we're really getting fundamentally into trying to understand the phenomena of light, well, it starts to matter, doesn't it? Because then we're going to say, well, which is the substance? Which really is the substance, and which is the lack of that substance? And as we know from physics, you look at that closely, and even though you could define the sun as something that absorbs darkness, but when you look for the substance, you're going to end up finding out about photons, you're going to realize that the substance is light and darkness is actually the absence of light. And so you're going to want to set the definitions up. You could define light as an absence of darkness, and that works most of the time, but it breaks down on a certain level. And that's what we're talking about with objectivity and subjectivity. Everybody believes in both of those things. Furthermore, you can put one in terms of the other. We can explain our subjective experiences as being caused by objective things. For one, our brain, but also, if I see a coyote, I can explain that subjective experience in terms of the object, the coyote that's out there. The light's shining, bouncing off the coyote, I'm sensing that. That's why that explains the appearance. So what is subjectivity in this example is, the experiences of the will. And it doesn't matter if you think the will is free or not. It just matters that you understand that it's the seed of identity. So that's the subject. Your personal sense of identity is the subject in this case. The will is the subject. And if it's an unfree will, okay, it's still the subject. And you can also explain the objective world in terms of the subjective. You can say, well, my objective assertion is there's a coyote over there. And how do I explain that? Well, in terms of the subjective data that I'm getting. Okay, so I also am an objectivist. I share in Menham's view that we need to be more, we need to be natural philosophers. We need to take our information, objectively. But to me, that means that I'm going to admit that first, I'm a subjective creature. And the reason is because to define objectivity, we do that in terms of information that is subjective. Sense information comes with us as part of perception. Perception, it's all subjective because it's all experienced from the point of view of this will, of this sense of identity. Okay, so when we're defining objectivity, we're going to have to do so in terms of the evidence, which is going to come down to sense experiences. All right? If you want to say, no, the objective world is first for us humans, then there's a problem. It's circular because we're going to say, well, how do you know about the objective world? And we're going to say, well, through subjective experiences. And what are the subjective experiences? Well, things caused by the objective world. But I don't have access to the objective world. I have access, direct access to my subjective experiences. So it becomes a circular definition if you start with objectivity. But if you admit that, no, you are a subjective creature, then, and that your theory of objectivity is suddenly just a model that you build out of the information you have, the limited information that you have, that's not circular. Because you see, as a subjective creature, yes, I have perceptions. And I don't know where they come from, but I know I have subjective perceptions. And I know that I can see that there's different characters in different of the perceptions. The perceptions that we call sense perceptions are very consistent, right? They follow the laws of physics. If I, sense myself holding an object at a certain height and I drop it, it takes us the same amount of time to reach, the bottom, to reach the ground or whatever it's being dropped onto. Every time within a certain, range of air. So we categorize some of our perceptions as appropriate information to use for our objective model. But since all of that information is subjective, it goes in this one direction. We are subjective creatures, and then we build an objective model.